everyone. We're back with another casual conversation with the classic. I'm here with WWE veteran himself, Darren Young, now known as Fred Rossa. How's it going? How are you today? How was quarantine treating you?
I'm doing well, and I'm glad you're saying WWE veteran because I had to correct you last time. But yeah,
the people
man.
don't need to know about that now.
Hey.
I'm joking.
I'm maintaining, man. I'm trying to make moves with, the podcast that I do. Is very therapeutic for me, man. So however I can share my story with my real life neighbor, it's been a lot of fun. So yeah, between the podcast and me doing my Rocky gym workouts at home and being with my god babies that are keeping me sane, I'm doing well through all this craziness. How about yourself?
I'm doing great. I was like I was saying before, we got really lucky that before all of this took place, we actually got to hang out a bit at the LAX Fest in California. I had no idea that it was going to end up being the way it ended up. And at first, same thing, was kind of just trying to be like, okay, staying home. I'm kind of a homebody anyways. Then I started losing my mind a little bit. I'm like, okay, now I need to start doing something, and came up with this, the Casual Conversations with the Classic, trying to keep that creative flow going, try to keep those moves going. Tell us more about your podcast. You guys have been doing that for a while now. What's it about? Where can people find it? How did it start? Like, what made you want to start doing a podcast?
Well, there were a few of my close friends that had told me that I should do a podcast, even when I was with WWE. But I said, like, there's really no time for me to do a podcast. And of course, with WWE, you need permission to wipe your ass, literally. And like, once I was released and everything, I was told again I should do a podcast. So it was the best thing that I could have ever done because it's very therapeutic for me. And I do it with my real life neighbor. When I moved out to LA, August 2017, one morning I was just walking out of my house, and then I had ran into Arnold Telegarta, who I do the podcast with. And I ran into him, and, the world is starting to know I have a thing for Asians. And he's Asian himself. And he was walking his dog, Junior. And he started freaking out when he saw me. He's like, "Oh my God, no way, Darren Young." And I'm saying to myself, "Oh God, now this fan knows where I live because I'm a homebody too."
Yeah.
When I'm not on the road, I'm home. So like when I ran into this fan at the time who was freaking on social media, and I realized that he was a YouTuber. A pretty well-known YouTuber, him and his wife, and we just started hitting it off. And like there are some people that like I can vibe with wrestling about, and there's some people I cannot vibe with wrestling. Like he's never taken a bump in his life, but he understands. He tries to see the best of both worlds. He's not like one of those fans that's like, oh, I can't watch this because of X, Y, and Z. I'm a fan myself. Just watch it, enjoy it. If you don't like it, I mean, they'll take it home soon in the ring. And then there's another match and another match, everything. He's very knowledgeable. I always call him the Brofessor. So we named it Pro and Bro Wrestling because I'm the pro and he's he's just we're just both fans of the business, and it's been a lot of fun. Like I said, it's therapy for me. Every week I do it is like therapy, heavy guest show. But whenever we can get guests on it that are meaningful to me, we're gonna have guests on. And like, it doesn't have 1 million followers. It doesn't have incredible numbers. But again, it's therapy for me. And I was for that one person that is inspired by the podcast, that get something out of it. So yeah, I'm not, numbers would be good, but I'm not about the numbers. I'm about spreading positive vibes through my podcast.
No, 100%. And then a lot of times it is kind of for yourself too. It is that ability to let to be able to talk about what you want to talk about and express yourself on a forum where other people can listen to it. If they relate, if they don't, it doesn't matter, but it lets you do that. And I think that's a really cool thing about podcasting as well. So you guys do talk about wrestling, because every once in a while you'll tag me in something. It'll be like a funny clip, or it'll be like a match that's memorable and stuff. When you guys are talking about wrestling, do you cover it by week to week basis of what's going on, or just like classic moments and things that you grew up watching, or what is it more about?
A little bit of this and a little bit of that. I remember when we first started doing the podcast, I wasn't really watching wrestling as much. So maybe episode 3 was about going to WWE headquarters and going to the merchandise closet and grabbing a whole bunch of merchandise and not opening the box until years later. So Arnold is a diehard wrestling fan, so he watches it every week, and I try to tune in as much as I can. He always says that he's the co-host, but he's really the host, because he knows how to make the, even sometimes still today, there are times when I'm like, oh, I don't think that we have enough content to fill the hour, but he just knows, he's just a good host. He just knows how to fill that hour. And we might talk about one subject, but we might start rambling on another subject.
Yeah.
It's just fun. There's no fun with it.
And it's taped, so people can watch it on YouTube as well as listen to it wherever they listen to podcasts. So if you guys haven't, do check that out. So on the wrestling end of things, like I do want to talk about your career a bit. I know we've done this a couple years ago, but what I usually say is, or what I've noticed is that a lot of people that follow my page are aspiring wrestlers and people that want to break into the business. And we've seen a lot of people actually do that were just once followers of my page, and now they're like killing it on television. I'm like, that's crazy. So I do want to talk about that. Well, for example, MJF used to just follow the page, and we used to be buddies, and now he's MJF on AEW. You got Mariah May making moves in the UK. I remember when Mandy Leon first started, she just followed the page, and now she's killing the Ring of Honor. So I always find, and I know there's a ton of wrestlers that follow me currently that are just starting to train, or they're just breaking into the business. And what I've been trying to do with these shows when I get wrestlers on here is to make sure I ask them for like what sort of advice and what they would want to share with them. Like if you could go back and talk to your younger self when you were breaking in, what would you tell them now, kind of, because that gives people a little bit of perspective. And then also kind of sharing your story of breaking and stuff as well, because it also gives them perspective. Because from what I've learned from doing these interviews and just talking to people throughout the years, is nobody's stories are similar, and everyone's relationships with certain people are different. One person might say one thing about a certain person, like Vince McMahon, and then another person will say a completely different thing. And it gives everybody like different perspectives. And I kind of like to put that out there for people to know that like your journey and story is going to be unique and different, but also understand that everybody kind of went through some struggles and some bumps in the road.
Yeah.
And people that have like a history of success in the business have too, So that's usually what I try to do with these. I try to break into that. But before we get into that, I did want to, I wanted to say, I'm repping the shirt, the whole Block the Hate movement. I wanted you just to tell us about that a little bit first before we go into like your wrestling career. What is the Block the Hate movement? What is
That's what I'm talking. Well, I mean, before I get into that, like, I'm always tagging you because I want to get the wrestling classic rub. You know what I mean? Because you're probably one of the only ones that I really tag, because if I find something interesting, I'm like, oh, let me tag you, because you might get a kick out of what I've just posted. But the Block the Hate movement is very meaningful to me, because it's not just an LGBTQ movement. It's a movement for anyone is in this world. We all receive hate for various reasons, but in order to be strong and successful, you got to block the hate. And my fight is much more bigger than in a professional wrestling ring. It's outside of the ring, fighting bigotry and hatred and trying to be the voice of the voiceless when it comes to the LGBTQ community or anyone that gets bullied into various reasons. So when I was released from WWE, even before I was released from WWE, I would speak to kids a lot at schools. I genuinely enjoy doing the Be a Stars and stuff like that. So what I did was with the Block the Hate movement, I took WWE's Be a Star platform, and I made it into my own, the Block the Hate movement. So being able to go across the US and around the world to be able to share my message is very, very therapeutic to me. You know, I'm not an in and out type of guy. When I do these appearances, they don't get half of me, they get all of me. And, you know, the true test I realized when it comes to being able to engage and do almost like a 45-minute promo with kids is to keep their attention for 45 minutes. And I've been able to do that so many times. 500 fifth graders in one particular school, being able to keep their attention for 45 minutes, that's the true test of a promo, because it can be tough, you know, it can be tough. You got to have your routine, you know, you got to have your stories. And I remember when I came out publicly, like WWE kind of forced media training on me. And when I came out, I was like, no, I don't need media training. I'm going to say whatever I want to say. You're not going to censor me. But in all actuality, the media training really helped me, man. It really helped me gather my stories. It helped me become a better storyteller. So, yeah, the Block Hate movement, at the end of the day, I wanted it to be a household name. When people say you or I can achieve our dreams, I want it to be the next middle finger.
Yeah. No, and I really dig it. And I do like the shirt. If anyone wants this merchandise, you guys can find it. It's very comfortable. It's a stretchable shirt. They're comfy. I dig it. And it's a big movement.
Blockthehate.com, baby. Block the Hate.
Blockthehate.com. You guys check it out. And it is a thing. Like we've seen a lot of people. If you guys, I'm sure you guys have seen other people like Titus O Neil and Sasha Banks and others repping the t-shirt and stuff. And I just wanted you guys to get to know a little bit more what it's about. You've seen us all do the pose, the Block the Hate pose when we're taking pictures and stuff. That's all because of Fred over here, and he's really taking that to a whole different level. And it's cool, man, because we live in a era and generation different than ours when we were kids, because of social media being such a big deal in kids' lives. Like, I don't know, like I'm in that brink of when I was younger, I still played outside. I had a Nokia phone with Snake on it, and we called each other when we wanted to hang out with our friends. There was no going on social media and sharing pictures and that, and having that mental instability, caring about likes and all these things that we didn't have to worry about it. So I think when it comes to Block the Hate, yeah, it's about a lot more. It comes to all the hate that I think people are dealing with when it comes to social media and stuff too, that they build up in their own head. You just got to be able to overcome those odds and stuff, because the more society changes and grows, the more I think children have to worry about nowadays. It's crazy. I don't know. It's not as innocent as it used to be, but I feel like every generation must say that.
Dude, it drives me crazy. When I got released from WWE, I had 335,000 followers. Now I have like 298. I'm like, what's going on? Like, I don't know the algorithm or what.
Yeah.
So it does, even someone like me, it does mess with you mentally. Like, what's going on? Am I not posting enough? Am I not posting the right content? So even someone like me, it affects. So I can just only imagine how it affects, someone, Tommy Gunn from Wichita, Kansas. It could affect him. So it definitely affects me.
No, 100%. I agree. And I'm just remembering like my days in high school. I'm like, I can't imagine being in high school and kind of considering your worth and popularity through social media, which is, I guarantee, I know it's a thing nowadays. It wasn't for me, but I'm like, I know that's a thing. Like, I'm sure, because there's kids that talk to me sometimes that want to grow their social media and they ask me how to do it and stuff. And I'm being who I am. Like, trust me, it bothers me too. Sometimes my following drops. I think at one point I had 588K, and then I fell to 572, and like literally, it's stagnant there. It's not moving. If I'm being honest with you, like it's not moving. But I'm like, I've trained myself not to care about that number and just keep putting out content and doing stuff, because I've been able to network through this page, and I've been able to find opportunities, and that's what matters to me. But I understand when I talk to kids, I'm like, oh, like my following's not growing. I'm not getting these many likes. I'm like, and it's hard to explain to them. Like, I guess you have to experience it yourself. But like, I'm like, that doesn't matter. Don't worry, just keep doing your thing. If you're really passionate about wrestling, then just keep doing your thing. Social media and its effect on kids these days, I think it's underappreciated now. Like, I'm sure there'll be a CNN documentary about it one day, and the effects of mental health because of social media. But once again, I think the Block the Hate movement works in that avenue too, because there's a lot of hate on social media too. And another thing that has stepped up, and I'm sure you're aware of it, is those people, those internet trolls that will never have the courage to say anything to you in person have become so much more powerful now because everyone's putting themselves out there on social media, whether it's Instagram, TikTok, Snapchat, wherever you're putting yourself out there. They come out now and they feel like the most powerful people. And that's where that hate comes. And that's what you need to block out, because you got to realize that these people that you actually don't know, like realistically, yeah, you want to cater to the people that support you, but these people don't really matter. And that's something people are going to have to learn about. I think it's new to the world. I'm sure you've dealt with it. Yeah.
Of course.
Yeah.
I always say, if they don't know you personally, don't take it personal. So if someone's spitting some hate at me on social media that I've never met before, I'm not going to really be bothered by it. But if it's someone I know, yeah, it would bother me, because if I have a connection with someone, then it would bother me. But like, I'm not a big video game player, but I look at it as a game. If someone's going to spit hate on me, I'm just going to like block them. It's just so quick, like block. It's literally a video game to me. It's like I'm like a sniper. I'm block them and they're out of my life.
No, and it's true. In social media, that's the one thing that I think people don't really use to their best effort, is that we have the ability to just block people. Literally, like we can literally just block them and just get that negativity out of the way and keep a positive atmosphere. But it's a whole new world. I want to get to wrestling now a little bit. I
haven't been watching much. I haven't been watching.
We're going back. We're going back.
I've been babysitting, but yeah.
We're gonna go back because this is a question I ask everybody on here before I get to where they're going. Because once again, everybody's story is different. For you, what was your first memory of wrestling, and then what was the moment that maybe you were watching a certain match or promo or something happened, maybe you went to a live show that you realized, hey, I actually want to do this?
Oh yeah, that's a great question. Probably my dad was always a big wrestling fan, and he still is. And I was the only child growing up, so it was just him and I. It was probably when Hulk Hogan body slam. You probably hear this all the time, but it was true, man. When Hogan body slam Andre the Giant, I was hooked, and then from then on, I played like not basketball. I played football and I did amateur wrestling because it was like the closest thing to professional wrestling. I had like laser-like focus. And why I say football was the closest thing is because football, I would hit people late and then they want to fight with me, and then it would end up in a wrestling match because I grab them in a side headlock, take them over, and then all the kids are big. Oh, here goes Fred wrestling again. Here goes Fred roughhousing again. So again, I've always been a fan of it. So that Hogan Andre moment was something that really, really stuck out to me. But what made me want to probably pursue this, well, I've always wanted to pursue this since I came out the womb, but probably what really, really opened my eyes was probably, I'd have to say the Iron Man match between Shawn Michaels and Bret Hart, man. That was like that moment I realized, like, wow, like these guys went over 60 minutes and like these two were my favorites. I have a personal relationship with Bret Hart that has nothing to do with wrestling. My uncle here in LA, he's a urologist. And when Bret Hart years ago was diagnosed with cancer, my uncle gave him great advice. And my uncle Bret had told me at all the doctors he had talked to, my uncle was the most informative and helped Bret out, almost conquer cancer, So that's my personal relationship with Bret Hart, So just to be able to see those guys go one-on-one at WrestleMania 12, it was when I realized I wanted to do this. And I remember my high school yearbook, the last sentence that I wrote my high school yearbook was WWF, here I come. And I did it.
That's insane. That you could actually go back to your yearbook and you see that you wrote that and it actually happened. That's a full circle story in itself. Another question I usually ask people is, when you realized like the actual the fact that wrestling is scripted, did your opinion change at all? Like, I think we all went through that period. Like I always say, when I was a kid, all my friends watched it. We were all about it. I was a kid in the Monday Night Warriors, NWO, DX, Stone Cold. We were all about it. Then slowly my friends started figuring it out. They're like, oh, UFC became a big deal. I stuck with it because I looked at it in a different perspective. Even when I found, I'm like, oh, I think I love this even more now that I get it. Like, this is even cooler to me. This art of it it's mesmerizing to me. But how did you take it?
Kayfabe. I still kayfabe. My parents, if they were to come to a show and I got hurt or something like that, I kayfabe everyone. It's real to me. And I was one of those kids. How old are you?
I'm 28.
Okay, I'm 36. Now, if we went to the same high school, I would have been that guy flipping over the table and taking that big bump like Mick Foley.
Yeah.
How Mick Foley takes that big bump into the stairs. That's what I would be doing, And I would listen to the kids, oh, or I'd somehow run my head into the lockers, but hit it so hard where like it didn't hurt me, but I would just like time it right where it looked like I blasted my head into the lockers. I was one of those kids because I would always listen to the kids around me like, oh, so that realness was so important to me. And that's something that's still important to me when I go out there and wrestle. If I'm doing the opening match and crickets, I'm going to try to think of stuff on the fly to get the people to be like, oh, wow, that's real. Or, ooh. Like my go-to is, like if I'm in the ring, if you and I are doing a match and you go to shoot me to the buckle, I'm going to take that Triple H bump over the top, because anytime I would do that, you hear the people, ooh. So that believability, that realness is so important to me. So kayfabe till the end. Like,
no, I appreciate that. Because that's one of the biggest arguments today is kayfabe dead is not. And I believe it is what it is to you, but it's up to you to make that decision. You ruin it for yourself if you're going to ruin it for yourself. Most fans have ruined wrestling for themselves for trying to know too much. When if you just sit back and enjoy the show and just take it as is, because it's a form of escapism, isn't it? Like you're supposed to, it's like going to a movie. As you're sitting there, that's everything. That's it.
Yeah.
You don't go and ask for the spoilers of Endgame. You don't go and ask how they acted. You don't do any of that. You shouldn't do any of that. You don't sit there and be like, tell me what surprise appearance is happening, who's backstage, even though you don't have backstage at a movie. But you know what I mean? Like that's a whole thing. But I want to detour from that for a second because you said something there that kind of made me think about the current situation. You're talking about, even when you would take those bumps, you wanted to hear the reaction of the people because you fed off of that. And that's a big thing in professional wrestling is feeding off the people. As someone that's been in the ring, has done this for years, still doing it today, how weird must it be for the wrestlers right now to be putting on shows in front of no audience? Like
right here, baby.
Yeah,
right here. Like again, we love it, but the reaction of the crowd, having a crowd there, kind of softens the blows because what we do hurts. It's scripted entertainment, blah, 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 but it hurts. But hearing the people, their reaction, it just makes everything hurt less, And then just recently, I don't know if today, apparently, I guess in Florida, they're going to start allowing fans. Did you read that?
Yeah, so supposedly Florida, they are lifting a lot of their bans just generally, like they were kind of opening restaurants and everything else. And one of the things that they're lifting is that these larger sporting events, including professional wrestling, is going to allow 25% of their fan base to actually come to shows if those companies allow it. Like if WWE is like, we're cool with that, or if AEW is like, they're cool with that. They're the only two that are actually like still going hard right now and both based out of Florida technically. So I don't know how I feel about it. Like, how do you feel about that? Do you think that should happen right away? Like, I understand how important it is to have fans there, but we're in the middle of a pandemic here. I don't know.
Yeah, the fans are so important, and like you have some states that are lifting it, some states don't want to lift it. It's got to be universal, man, because we're not going to overcome this. It's just common sense. Like I can only watch maybe 30 seconds of the news. I allow myself 30 seconds because I get so angry and my blood pressure. Like I check my Apple Watch, and normally it's like my blood pressure's at 50, but when I watch the news, it goes up to 99. It goes up to 99. So I just get so angry. It's just gotta we're not gonna overcome it. But really, we should. They have so much content on the network. Just do reruns. Just take a break from wrestling in general and come back in. I don't know when it's all over. Like people need breaks, and people still traveling and wrestling and could be bringing this stuff home to their families, you got to worry about your families first. Family comes first.
I agree, and I was actually really big on the idea of them taking like a break after WrestleMania. I'm like, yo, you got to WrestleMania, you guys got through it. That's great. We appreciate it. You gave us something to look forward to that weekend. Take some time off. But then when they started promoting Money in the Bank the second night, I'm like, oh, they're not going to. Because I agree. I don't know. Like I know there's two sides of this whole pandemic. There's the people that are taking it really seriously. Then there's the people that aren't taking it too seriously. And then there's everyone that's kind of in the middle. But like I said, like when I was in LA and we were hanging out at LAX Fest in that small room with a bunch of wrestling fans, we weren't taking it seriously at that point. Even though Italy was already on lockdown, I have a friend from Italy and she was telling me all about it and things were going crazy in Europe. We're like, oh, it's all cool. Everyone's shaking hands, taking pictures and whatnot. And then I came home and I was like, nope, I'm doing this 14-day quarantine. Like I said, I came home like a couple of days after Tom Hanks was sick, the NBA shut down, NFL shut down. I'm like, oh, this is big. This is a big deal. And I don't want to detour too much, but like I'll give you an example. About 2 weeks ago now, I live near a beach, White Rock Beach. I live really close to it, so I usually do my cruise by just to get by myself, cruise by the beach, just to get my headspace right. And one of the Saturdays, it was just full of people. Everyone's flying their kites, kite surfing, picnicking together, and I'm like, this isn't, They told us here that we flattened the curve. Like BC's kind of good. We're not getting those many cases. Literally the day after I drove by, 50 new cases. The day after that, 90 new cases. I'm like, oh, everyone stopped taking it seriously. Now a bunch of people got sick, and now everyone's back to taking it seriously again. Just take it easy, you know what I mean? Let's just wait it out a little bit. So I agree with you.
When's your birthday, bro? You a Scorpio?
Yeah.
You're Scorpio too?
My birthday's 2 days after yours. I checked it when I was doing some research before this.
Damn. See, that's why we get along. We like to be alone. There are times where we like to be alone and we're fine with being alone.
Yeah.
But yeah, this is a little crazy now.
Yeah, no, so yeah, I like my drives. But yeah, so going back to you though, so you became a fan, you knew you wanted to do this, you stayed a wrestling fan through it the whole time because you didn't fall out of it. That's why I always ask that question, because I'm like, there's always a period where I think sometimes they're like kind of people fall out of it. But what I've learned, most of the people that pursue this never fall out of it. They stick a wrestling fan the entire time, and that says a lot. Going to a school, picking a school, how was that? Because that seems to be something that's very important part of the journey, to pick that right school.
Well, that was easy for me because I was scooping ice cream throughout high school and in college. I was scooping ice cream, and my boss's uncle worked at a gym in New Jersey, and one of the guys that worked out at the gym in the front desk, he was part of a wrestling school in New Jersey called Independent Wrestling Federation. So I was like a sponge. Like, I wanted to know, where's the school at? I wanted to visit. I visited that summer, August 2002. And I paid $2,000. I used scholarship money. I paid up front. I didn't do that installment, 500 here, 500 there. I paid all the money up front because this was something I wanted to do, and I was serious about it. And I got that old school training. I learned how to be professional. I learned how to wear tights and stuff like that, and trunks and boots, and just look the part. So I got great experiences there, but when you keep doing the same thing, you get the same results. So I wanted to learn more of like the Japanese style. So that's when I started training with a lot of indie guys in the Jersey area. The guys like, you might not know, but Damian Adams, Josh Daniels, Robbie E, Robert Stone. I wanted to learn a different style. So that's when I ventured off to another school to continue to further my education in the ring. So yeah, I learned a lot of great stuff from IWF, and one of the first veterans I got to share the ring with, who was also at the LAX Fan Fest, was a Honky Tonk Man.
Yeah.
And people can say what they want about the Honky Tonk Man, but every time he sees me, whether it's at a signing or backstage with WWE, he comes running over to me, and he's nothing but smiles and stories, and I just crack up, with his southern swag. when I wrestled him a couple times when I first started, he would always say, "You know that Samson, that boy Samson," because that's my name on the when I first started. It was Fred Sampson,
Yeah.
and he would be like, "You know that." He would be like, "You know that Samson, you're gonna be something someday. That boy's gonna be something. I'll tell you that right now." So I still see him, and anytime I see him, it's like people like him and Scott Hall that are at their booth and they see me, they come over to me to say hi. I'm like, oh my goodness, who am I? I'm a
Yeah.
nobody. These guys come over to me and show me so much love. Scott Hall would always say, "Hey man, I really appreciate you coming out and being so courageous, man. And you and the stuff that you and Titus were doing was pretty cool. Hey, I know that you were the workhorse of the team." I said, hey, it is what it is. Titus was a talker. Titus was a talker. I was the bumper. It is what it is. But those veterans always showed me so much love, and I always be grateful. I'll never be one of those. I promise myself, I'm never going to be one of those disgruntled veterans being mad at everything, mad at the world. I don't have a bad thing to say about Vince McMahon because he gave me an opportunity by myself to do the Bob Backlund, make Darren Young great again. So it's just unfortunate the people that work under him didn't have my back, So I'm not going to be one of those disgruntled people. I can honestly say I did it,
Yeah.
I'll hear some people say, "Oh, I wish you would have had the tag team championships more." I did it though. I did
Yeah.
it. Whether it was 1 time, 10 times, 5 times, I don't care. I did it. So I'm very grateful.
No, you just loaded me up with so many questions in my head. But the first one I want to start with is the fact that you said you started training in 2002. And you mentioned earlier in 2003, you were already doing extra work and stuff for the WWE. How did those opportunities come up? I know,
I was
were there any
hungry.
stories from was there any stories from when you were doing that extra work of meeting anyone that gave you some advice or seeing someone that kind of led you in the right direction? Because I've heard stories of guys that snuck their way backstage to do the extra stuff and they're trying to hand out their tapes and doing stuff, and they'd bump into that one person that would be like, "Hey, listen, don't do this or do that or let me hold this." And there's always some sort of story. Did you have any of those situations?
Well, I joined the wrestling school August of 2002. September 11th, 2002, 1 year after 9/11, is when I first stepped foot in a ring for the first time ever. And then from then on, it was history. I was what they consider the golden boy. I was like, I caught on quick. I went from beginner class to advanced class very quickly. And the guy that I had met at the gym through a family family friend, the guy that I had met and introduced me to IWF, when he had found out that I had joined, then I did the beginners class and then I moved into his class, the advanced class. He was like, "What the hell are you doing in this class?" I said, "Oh, the coach moved me to advanced class." And he was like, "That's ridiculous," So I caught on quick, and people's feelings are going to get hurt, but it is what it is. There are people that want to do this for a career, and there are people that want to do this as a hobby. I respect both, but I wanted to do this as a career. And once I was rolling, 2003, I did my first commercial with WWE. I was allowed to. Dr. Tom Pritchard at the time was a scout with WWE, and he was always looking at our school IWF, and he would handpick certain guys to do extra work. So he gave me that opportunity to do my first ever Survivor Series commercial. And after that, it was, I believe, 2005 is when I was actually first time backstage for WWE ever. And I
Yeah.
remember, I think the head writer's name was Ed Koski. He came up to me
Yeah.
in 2005 and was like, "Can you play a detective?" I said, "Sure, yeah, I can play detective." And once he said that, I'm like this,
Yeah.
because I'm nervous. First time backstage, even signed with WWE, years later signed, I still get nervous, But that particular time was very nerve-wracking for me because I had to play a detective with the Bashams to kind of swerve Eddie Guerrero and Chavo Guerrero. And I just remember when Vince McMahon was still hands-on with the backstage segments, he I messed up like 11 times. We were doing take after take after take,
And
and
he
I
was
was
right
so
there.
nervous. He was right there. I was so
Yeah.
nervous, and Vince was like, "Oh, I'm buying the Guerreros, I'm buying the Bashrooms, but I'm not buying this detective. What are we gonna do about it?" And it was like that 12th take. I finally got it right to their liking, and I was like, "Ah." Oh. But then I'm thinking in the back of my head, these guys are gonna remember that like I was struggling and stuff like that, and I'll never get signed. So there was a time when I was very like down and out, but I didn't give up. And I remember Eddie Guerrero always saying, every time I kept messing up, Eddie Guerrero would be, "Don't worry about it, Holmes. It's gonna be okay." Like the same way his swag is on
Yeah.
TV, he was like with me backstage. He said, "Don't worry, Holmes. Just be calm, cool, and collected. Man, you're in charge." And Chavo, still to this day, he remembers that day too. Years later, this was 2005. We're in 2020 now. Chavo still brings that up anytime I see him at conventions. He brought it up in LAX, the LAX Fan
Yeah.
Fest that I seen, that I had ran into him at. He was like, "Hey man, you remember when you were backstage doing that segment and you were so nervous?" I said, "Chavo, nothing's changed. Nothing's changed. I'm still nervous."
I know he's seen a million things, bazillion things throughout his time, obviously, but Vince probably didn't remember by the time you got there, right? Did it ever come up with him?
Oh no, no, never came up with him. I think the last time I was backstage with WWE, I had brought my podcast homie Arnold backstage. This was in Bakersfield, and I had on glasses, like I had on these like reading glasses, and I'm like
Yeah.
backstage, and Vince had passed us. So I was like, I'd be an idiot. He didn't recognize me, and I'd be an idiot. And Arnold was there. I'd be an idiot if he walks past me a second time and I don't say anything to him. So I took off my
Yeah.
glasses, and once he was done on the phone, this was before main event was going to air, and he's on his phone. After he was done with this conversation, I stepped out in front of him and I said, "Hey, Vince, it's Darren. Nice to see you." And then he was like, "Oh my God, man, you look great. How you doing?" I said, "Oh, I'm doing well. I do miss it here in WWE, but I'm keeping it moving." He's like, "Man," he looked at Arnold, he introduced himself, and he looked at me. He's like, "This guy right here, one hell of a guy, one hell of a guy." And he said, "Give me another hug." He gave me another hug, and then he went on his way, man. But I'm glad I had cut him off because you never know, man. You never know. And a lot of people that I'm close with say that he might not know what's going on. He
Yeah.
probably still thinks I'm signed. He probably
Yeah.
still thinks I'm signed to WWE. So he's just now seeing me now. So he doesn't know. But then before the pandemic happened, I had got a call from WWE's John Cone about coming back to WWE for WrestleMania Access and doing some stuff for the network. So I'm like, yeah, I'm down to do it. So I was very upset when, all this craziness happened because I would have been in Tampa, and who knows what'll happen because it's all about it's a political game. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like you're backstage, everyone's wondering, "Oh wow, he looks good. Oh wow, what have you been up to?" And like I was ready to go backstage for WrestleMania and be like, because you get 300 people production, they're coming up to you and you're saying the same story all the time. Like, and people ask you, "Oh, what have you been up to? What have you been up to?" And I was ready to tell the people, "Hey guys, I just came off my first ever experience off Broadway in New York. I was there for a couple of weeks. I was singing, dancing, acting. I didn't think I can do it." And one of the reasons why I did this musical was because Chris Jericho was a huge inspiration to me because everything he does is incredible. Everything he's got that Midas touch. And I remember when he did Dancing with the Stars, and that was a wake-up call for me. If he can do Dancing with the Stars, I mean, I can do a musical. So I was very happy that I did the musical, man. And I hit a home run, man. I'm so happy. So right now, currently, the musical that I did, it was a musical pilot. So we're they're looking for a live streaming network to pick it up, Amazon or Netflix or something like that. So they're still in the process of trying to get picked up. But I was very proud of myself, man. And if I had to tell that story 300 times at WrestleMania weekend, I was ready to tell it.
Yeah, and I know you were really excited, so we talked about it. I wasn't going to bring it up because I thought if you weren't supposed to, you shouldn't. But we talked about it at the LAX Fest, and you told me, like, yo, I'm going to WrestleMania. I'll be in Tampa too. You were asking me if I was going to be down there, and you're like, they called me back to do some stuff. And I get that because once again, out of all the conversations I had, one of the key things that always comes up is like, just being present makes a big difference. Just being in the area, being in the like showing up to wherever the events are, like that makes a big difference. So it's a bummer that didn't work out, but WrestleMania didn't work out for anybody the way I think any of us planned, unfortunately, because it's pandemic. And I hope you do get to go the next year, get it going. Were you gonna say something?
You know, Justin, I talked to you earlier. I talked to you earlier about, you know, media training and all that stuff. You can ask me anything. There's no such thing as a stupid question, because that media training has helped me out so much. Like if you ask me if you ask me a question about the president, you know, you ask me a question about the president, I would answer it. You know, Justin, unfortunately, I can't control what our president does. I can only control what I do. And every time my feet touches the ground, I know the LGBTQ community is counting on me. That's why my whole Block the Hate movement is so meaningful to me. You see how I switch it? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Because if I start talking about number 45, then all the attention is on number 45 and not on me, you know? So there's no such thing as a stupid question. I know how to navigate back to me.
No, 100%. Well, that's good to know. I just didn't know what, you know, if that was something we should talk about, but that speaks levels on the WWE's media training for sure.
Absolutely.
I do want to talk about this musical though. What is the name of the musical? If you can give us some details about it, because if anyone is listening to this and they might, who knows, be a wrestling fan but work for a streaming service, let them know what's going on.
Yeah, of course. I need that wrestling classic rub. Yeah. I'm trying to get that rub, man. We help each other out.
100%.
So I always say, don't die with a story and you tell it. So when I got this opportunity to do the musical in December, it's called Little House on the Ferry. It's a musical about marriage equality based around the 2011 year when marriage equality was passed in New York State. So I was the lead actor, and it was a love triangle. I was the lead, man. Like I've done a couple of cameos here and there for films. I've done some free stuff, which I don't like doing because I know my worth. But they took care of me on this project, but the money wasn't, it wasn't about the money. It was proving to myself that I can do it. You know, I've gotten scripts in WWE where I'm like, oh my God, this is too much for me to remember. This is too much. I'm nervous. But I was given a 50-page script, and I was so happy that I hit a home run with it. I studied the script. I did my dancing work. I did my singing work. I really put in the work, and I'll be talking about it until I'm 6 feet under. I want to do more musicals. I want to be the first wrestler to ever, you know, do a musical. You know what I mean? That's why I did it, because I wanted to be the first at it. And it was so much fun. And I always make excuses, CTE concussions, but I didn't think I could do it, you know, but I've been supplementing with ketones and just switching up the way I eat, the way I supplement. So I'm drinking my ketones now, and it probably repaired damaged tissue to my brain, but I was just so on for the musical. So I'm still on cloud nine from the experience, but yeah, Chris Jericho was definitely an inspiration in me doing it. And he actually, again, I tried to get that Chris Jericho rub on the story, and he actually retweeted my story that I tagged him in about him being a big inspiration to me. So, hey, one monkey don't stop no show. So one door closes, another door opens, man. So I'm very happy with everything that's been going on with me.
And that's super cool, because I was thinking about it right now when you said that. I'm like, we've seen wrestlers leave wrestling, go into acting. We've seen wrestlers leave wrestling, go into MMA. We've seen wrestlers become rock stars, but we have yet to see a wrestler leave and go to Broadway. That's actually true. You would be the first. That'd be really cool. Yeah.
Exactly. So why not? Yeah.
Yeah, and it's good. Yeah, and I think that's something we'll talk about that too, because once again, there's a lot of people that dream to become wrestlers, a lot of people that go and do it, they reach the level of success, but there is a life after wrestling if you want there to be one. You can contest that, correct?
Absolutely.
Did you go through a phase where you felt very confused after you got released? Was there a point where you're like, what am I supposed to do now? How'd you overcome that?
Yeah, when I got released, I knew when I moved out to LA, August 2017. I got released October 2017. I knew when August 2017. I moved out to LA August 2017, but I was also overcoming an injury, the Tommy John surgery. You can't really see it, but the Tommy John surgery to my elbow, which is very uncommon in wrestling. I was just coming back, and you just get that feeling, nothing lasts forever. And when I got the call in October about my release, 3 days before my birthday, hey, it is what it is. I always say Michael Jordan can't play forever. I'm not saying I'm Michael Jordan, but you can't play forever full time. So I wasn't so upset over that. I was more upset over the next year's WrestleMania when Finn Balor, who I love, who I'm good friends with, how they have finally embraced the LGBTQ colors on Finn Balor, but they did it with a straight guy, which is cool. But I was with the company for a long time, and I'm like, man, give a dog a burnt bone, man. My last feud was with the Miz, and when I met the Miz years ago, I couldn't stand him because he was the loudest guy in the locker room. But my last feud, he was actually, rooting for me to take the title from him, So, it's just these experiences that, Dr. Tom Pritchard would always say, sometimes in this business, you're going to have to eat shit and like the taste of it. And he was so right about it. So my release in October, I wasn't so upset over it. Again, I was more upset over them finally embracing the LGBTQ colors on Finn and not me. But like I said, representation is so important, and my whole Block Hate movement is near and dear to me, and I won't stop rocking and rolling until I'm 6 feet under.
That's fair. I want to ask you about the Bob Backlund storyline, just in one looking at it from one perspective of we hear a lot of it's hard to pitch ideas to Vince. He does the creative issues that people have when they leave the company. You pitched that idea from the last time we talked. I remember you telling me you pitched that idea over and over and over again until they ran with it. How was it pitching the idea? Did you run into any roadblocks, or do you have like a positive experience doing that?
Not with Vince.
No?
I don't ask, and I learned this from Titus and probably a few other superstars. I can't really remember, but I learned this from Titus. You can't go to the other writers because the writers are honestly yes men. They're do boys. Do this, do that, do this, do that. You got to go to the boss, and I think that's something that definitely in my heart it aggravates Triple H because who's going to be running the company when Vince is gone? It's going to be Triple H. It's going to be Stephanie. So I would always go to Vince McMahon if I had a problem. And I probably mentioned it with you. I mention it all the time. But the most intimidating thing about Vince McMahon is his office door. Once you get through his office door, you better have a game plan. And that's something that Titus O'Neil, being the talker, he would always bust through Vince's door. Hey, man, you got anything for us on Raw? And he would be serious. He would be funny, but he would be aggressive. Like, hey, you got anything for us on Raw? So I know tag teams don't last forever. So once our tag team was done, I had pitched the idea with visuals and storyline written out, proposed it to Vince McMahon, talked to him 20 minutes about the idea and yoga, like because he was asking me, oh man, how do you get such a big barrel chest like that? And I said, yoga. He's like, really, yoga? I said, yeah, yoga corrects your posture. Instead of being like this all the time, hunched over, it makes you look big, makes you, it squeezes your shoulder blades back together. So it just makes my chest appear bigger. So yeah, the most intimidating thing about Vince McMahon is his office door. And he gave me that opportunity, man. He called up Bob back when I forget what winter it was, but that winter he called up Bob Backlund, and then soon after that WrestleMania of the following year, we started doing vignettes in Stanford. We started doing our vignettes in Stanford, and we got the ball rolling on that. So yeah, Vince was very supportive. It's just unfortunate the people that work under him didn't have my back.
Yeah, that's tough because I don't know. We always hear stories about how it's hard to get through to Vince, how it's hard to go to his office, how it's the creative. Most people that leave that company on their own will are angry about the creative. But then, since doing these, I've heard both sides of the story. I've heard people that have had great experiences, know how to approach it. Just say, you just got to stop caring, and then once you stop caring, then you'll go approach him, and then things happen. Then you hear the other side, well, people that care too much, and it's hard. And I was curious about your experiences with them, or if you found it difficult. But that was a great explanation that door is intimidating, and then because getting through there is the hardest part, and then from there anything can really go either way. Titus O Neil, how's your relationship?
Justin,
Yeah.
Wait, Justin. Back in the day, in the '80s, it was just Vince McMahon and Pat Patterson and maybe one or two other people, creating the magic. But now it's Vince McMahon and 10 other people, or however many people that are sitting in the meeting. So if one person doesn't like you, it's just like our careers are controlled by a pencil. They can pencil you in and erase you out. So if one person doesn't agree, then if that one person knows how to swerve Vince McMahon into thinking that's not going to work, that's what happens.
And I started thinking, I don't know anything, right? I don't know nothing. I've never been backstage, but my mind was, you bring that up. I would think back in the day, the locker rooms back in the day, it was probably a little bit easier for them to go to Vince because it was a smaller team, and you'd go to Vince, and he had a closer relationship with these people, with the wrestlers and the talent. Where I think now he's kind of here, and there's all these other people you might be able to go to first before you go to Vince, but they might not be able to help you because at the end of the day, you need Vince to approve it. But when you have that intimidation of when you look at him more than just a human, you're like, that's my boss, that's Vince McMahon, you might be afraid to go to him first. You might want to go to an agent or a writer and pitch this idea and see what they think, and it might get crushed before you ever take that leap of faith to actually go to him. I don't know if that's true, but does that seem like what it might be like backstage nowadays, where people might try their best to avoid going to Vince first, maybe?
Well, I mean, don't forget, back in the '80s, there was only a handful of people, and then the wrestlers. And the wrestlers were, you had the Click. You had, what's the one wrestler who slapped the one reporter?
David Schultz. Dark Side of the Ring just said a thing.
Dr. D. Yeah, Dr. D. David Schultz. So you had him and other wrestlers that are in your face, and they were controlling their narrative. So the business has changed. So now you have Vince McMahon and a slew of other people that you need to go up the food chain to get to Vince McMahon. But I learned now, man. You gotta bust through his door with a game plan, because if you start stumbling and fumbling, you're not going to succeed.
That's fair. It's good for anyone listening to this that ever has to put themselves in that situation one day. You got some advice here. How's your relationship with Titus O Neil?
Oh, it's great. He's making moves in Tampa. We still stay connected. Some of my closer friends, Titus, Heath Slater, Kalisto, just to name a few that I'm still close with and that mean the world to me. But yeah, the last time I saw Titus, after I was done with the musical this past February, I went to Seattle. I flew from New York to Seattle because anytime I do a project, I like to relax a little bit and unwind. And I had a crush in Seattle. I still do have a crush in Seattle.
Yeah.
But I went there to hang out with my crush, and Titus was there doing some stuff for Microsoft, and him and I connected, and we worked out at the training facility where the Seattle Seahawks play. And we've worked out there several times, but it was good to connect with him and work out with him. And you really, when you're on the road with, if we're on the road 6 days a week for 6-7 years together, I'm going to want to, beat the hell out of you, Justin.
Yeah.
But after a while, when we're not with each other as much, you miss, I'd miss you. I miss Titus. So to see him earlier this year meant a lot to me.
That's sweet, man. I know that's a question that if we were live right now, somebody would have asked for sure. Like, hey, do you still talk to Titus? So I thought I'd throw it out there.
Yeah.
But back to just the story a little bit before we wrap this up. The WWE. How was it breaking into the WWE? How was it, when was your tryout? How did you get that tryout? And what did it feel like when you knew that they were going to go with you?
I had so many tryouts with WWE, and I had the door shut my face so many times. Like, I was one of those guys. I remember when Dr. Tom Pritchard was in charge. Dr. Tom Pritchard would always say, keep doing what you're doing, keep doing what you're doing. And I remember there was a time when anytime WWE would be in the Northeast area, New Jersey, New York, Connecticut, Boston, Dr. Tom would say, if I'm not booked, if he doesn't book me, just show up, just show up. And if you get to work, if you get to be an extra, if you get to have a dark match, then cool, you get paid. If not, just be quiet. And I was one of those guys, if I didn't get any work, I was just quiet. I didn't ask for any money. And eventually people started getting word that, hey, I'm not on the list. I'm not on the list. So then they started doing the same thing as me. And then probably those same guys, when they didn't work, would also ask for money when they shouldn't be asking for money. So it was Simon Dean when he eventually took over for Dr. Tom Pritchard. No, actually, it was Tommy Dreamer who had took over for Dr. Tom Pritchard, I believe. And Tommy Dreamer has said, hey, man, you got to stop showing up at the arena when you're not booked. And I was devastated for the longest. I was not angry at Tommy Dreamer, but I was like hurt, like, oh, man, for years I've been when I'm not booked, I've been showing up backstage at WWE, working, maybe not working, but now I'm not allowed to do it. So I was devastated, man. So I remember my last resort because I was number 3 on the fire test. So if WWE hadn't signed me or called me, I would have probably been a firefighter now. But I remember May 4th, 2009, out of 75 guys and girls from all over the world, I got signed, man, and I earned my contract. I never worked so hard in my life to earn that contract those 4 days. And I remember the same day I got signed was the same day AJ Lee got signed.
Yeah.
So it's something that I'll never forget, and it's something I'm very proud of. Nowadays, guys get invited to do tryouts. They don't have to pay to do a tryout, but I paid $1,000 of my own money to do this tryout because this was something I wanted to do. I think it was $1,000 or $1,500. But I used my own money to do this tryout because it was my last resort, and I got signed, man. And I'm very proud of the moment.
Yeah, and this is pre-Performance Center. This is Warehouse FCW days, the Hot Warehouse.
FCW.
Yeah, those who have the WWE Network, you might have seen the documentary that they recently released. This was a different time. This wasn't like how we see like the annual tryouts of guys going there and people getting cut, but it's at the nice Performance Center, and then you get to go, when you get signed, you're at the Performance Center. So you went through that old school grind of the territorial place where you guys got to train and learn, which was obviously really different to what they have today. And you kept going back. So that shows your commitment and your resiliency to want to really make this happen, which is a really cool thing.
Justin, I was very bummed about WrestleMania the way it was because me being invited back. I think they were probably wanting to do something with the original NXT guys, or wanting to do something with the Nexus, because I don't know if it's been 10 years. I think it's been about 10 years since the first season of NXT. So I think they were looking to do something with all of us. So I was bummed out that we weren't able to do it, but who knows?
No, it really is. And the 2020 would be 10 years of the actual NXT invasion of Raw and everything, which is a whole nother. Yeah. We could probably go another whole hour talking about that first year of Nexus, because that's like when I think of the year 2010 in the WWE, like the first thing I think about is the Nexus. That was the year the Nexus invaded and ran rampant all summer. But yeah, it's been 10 years. That's crazy. Wow. Those were great times. I was just thinking, I was like, I remember watching when you guys came in and tore at the ring and choking Justin Roberts and all of that. I remember it all.
Yeah.
It was exactly where I was sitting. But and I think I want to ask you, obviously, we'll cap this off with you giving advice to people that are trying to do this. But I do want to pick your brain about one last thing. It's 2020. We've gone a very long way. There still hasn't been in either WWE or AEW. AEW has Sonny Kiss and people there that they could run with an idea with, and then WWE has people as well like Sonya Deville. But we have yet to see a legitimate full throttle LGBT storyline portrayed on television. They teased it with Lana and Liv Morgan at the infamous wedding of Bobby Lashley and Lana last year, I think, or earlier this year. And if you watch Total Divas, you can hear Sonya Deville saying how she tried to pitch it for last year's WrestleMania with Mandy, and then last minute it all fell apart. We've seen representation, like you said, we've seen the stuff with Finn Balor and the colors and whatnot, but there hasn't actually been an angle in professional wrestling dealing with the LGBT community or this and all of that. And considering that, a lot of storylines sometimes feel repetitive, very simple but repetitive. Like, I love this whole Mandy Rose Otis thing, but it's a very simple storyline that we've seen over and over again, but we haven't yet seen this. How do you feel about that? And do you have, if you were put in the Booker chair, would you have any creative ideas that you would probably try to pitch?
Well, with AEW, I had pitched last year with I contacted Brandy Rose. I gave her an idea. I contacted Sonny Kiss, and I had asked Sonny Kiss, would you be down, if we could, would you be down to team together? It would almost be like Festus and what was the other guy's name?
Jesse?
You remember? Yeah, Jesse and Festus. Yeah. It would almost be kind of like that. Jesse and Festus, Zeus and Macho Man Randy Savage, where I would be the tough guy, and Sonny Kiss is like my little sister, because in the gay world, I would be like, oh, Justin, you're my sister. You're my sister. Yeah. That's how it is in the gay world. So that's how I pitched it I wrote it out like I did with Bob Backlund's gimmick. I wrote it out. I had visuals. I gave it to Brandy. I gave it to Sonny. And just recently, Sonny had contacted me and was like, oh, she mentioned something about my social media. And then she said, oh, it sucks that the people, I guess, at AEW didn't understand what I was trying to propose.
Yeah.
So at least I tried. But you get the whole Zeus, Macho Man, Jesse, and Festus. Sonny Kiss is my little sister, and no one messes with my little sister, Sonny Kiss.
Yeah.
So that's something, a dynamic that we could have had in AEW. But hey, I got to keep it moving. And then when it comes to WWE, I'm losing my train of thought. When it comes to WWE, I guess Sonya Deville was a little frustrated that her storyline hasn't been used, and I'm like, hey, been there, done that. You know what I mean? I've been in that situation, But recently, I was at the Sundance Film Festival, which is in Utah, and I was part of a panel discussion. And after I was done with the panel discussion, a rep from GLAAD that works with WWE like this, he came up to me and said that he had heard my story live and in the past, and he said, I know you're upset about, WWE putting the colors on Finn Balor and they didn't use you the way they should have, but honestly, between you and I, they're not ready for it. This is coming from a GLAAD rep, and the GLAAD rep said, I am so sorry that, you're upset about it. I said, I'm not upset about it anymore, but he told me the WWE is not ready for it. So, and I told him, I believe it. The WWE is just not ready. So they'll do things like they'll support causes, they'll support LGBTQ rights, but when it comes to actual representation, Justin, they're not ready.
Yeah, that's fair, man. I mean, there's a lot of things that in the past 5 years, there's a lot of firsts for a lot of different situations, whether it's Kofi winning the WWE championship, whether it's women main eventing. I feel like they're slowly working their way maybe in that direction, but at least, maybe they're not ready for you. But there's been a lot of firsts in the last 5 years for a company that's been around for over 50. So it says a lot. We'll see. I see it happening soon, though. Like I said, they've done some stuff in the past 5 years where I don't think anyone imagined, and maybe they got pressure in that direction. Maybe it was just time, but we'll see what happens. if you were to go back and talk to your younger self who was pursuing wrestling after everything you've been through, working for the WWE, your experiences there, being released, finding life after wrestling, knowing what you went through with training, everything we've kind of talked about, pitching ideas, everything. If you took all that together and you could give advice to younger Fred before he entered mainstream wrestling, what would you say?
Man, just be yourself, just be yourself and stop cutting promos like this to make your voice sound deeper and sound more masculine. Just be yourself, stop cutting promos like Shane Douglas, the franchise. You don't need to do that anymore. You can just be yourself, so yeah, be you, stay true to you, and take care of that body. That body is what makes you money, man. Take care of that body. And I've been fortunate enough to take care of my body. I've had my fair share of injuries, but I can't stress enough about taking care of your body. Your body is what makes you money, and you don't want to get to the pros and be a crutch. You want to be healthy. You want to be ready to go and wow the crowd. So definitely take care of that body.
Sweet. I really appreciate you doing this. I enjoyed this conversation. I hope we can do it again. Maybe when we start watching wrestling a little bit more, we can talk about what's going on today and we can pick it apart for a casual conversation. But we got to do what I've been trying to do with these every time we get a wrestler on here, is just allowing other people that might have the dream to become a wrestler, might be already training, like they can listen to this and they can hear someone else's experience and be like, oh, okay, so he went to a bunch of tryouts, didn't work out right away for me there. Like this happened to him too. Or, know that the steps they're taking are okay. Because in current culture and just in society, I think we have a lot more dreamers than we might have ever had before because we feel like we have more power through social media and building ourselves up. But we also I feel like a lot more people are hitting roadblocks. And mostly during this pandemic, it's a really hard time to stay motivated and stay full of optimism, because a lot of people had plans or things they were going to do, and then it all kind of got put on pause and stopped because of this. But I think we're all going to get through it. And just like anything else in anybody else's story, like we all go through road bumps, we all go through blocks. But if you're passionate and you're motivated and you really want to do something, then you will find creative ways to continue doing it or be committed and make it happen, and know that, this is, shit happens, man.
I see you making creative ways. I see you teaming up with Shad Gaspar. You're trying to be half crime time, half prime time. You're trying to have your cake and eat it too.
That happened because we did one of these, okay? And once again, this was just an idea I had one day when I was on somebody else's show. And I'm like, oh, why don't I just have conversations with people? Like I've been fortunate enough to build a solid network with a bunch of people in and outside the business, like whether they're entertainers and acting, modeling, or something else, as well as people in wrestling. So I was like, why not have conversations with the people and everyone's at home right now. Like this is the time to jump on this opportunity. So I did it with a few friends that I knew first, trying to break because even now, like I'm stumbling over my words and trying to get down professionally properly. But try to break that ice a little bit and get used to doing these interviews and try to maybe find a format along the way. And I did it with Shad. I hit him up and said, yeah, let's do it tomorrow. Like, and I hit him up and did it. And in the middle of the podcast, in the middle of our show, and I really appreciate it. He's like, you know what? People have been asking me to do podcasts all the time, and I've never really wanted to do them, but I like our vibe. We should do a podcast every week. And I'm like, sure, we can do that. Like, he just threw it at me, and I'm like, okay. He's like, we should do this every week. He's like, we should do it on Fridays, like in the middle of the show. And I'm like, okay, we're gonna do this. But once again, and I'm sure you can relate to this, I've had opportunities come up to me. I didn't jump on it, and then they were gone. And from that, I've learned that if an opportunity comes, just jump on it. Similar to you, like, hey, are you a detective? Yeah, I can play detective. And you're nervous it happens to me too. Hey, do you want to do a podcast every week? I'm like, yeah, sure. I'm like, can I handle every week plus my show I'm already doing? And then I just jumped into it, and now we're doing it. So you just got to, that's another word of advice is jump into opportunities if you get them.
Funny story about Shad before we go. I remember being an extra in like 2005 and 2006, whenever him and JTG were up on the road, and I feel he gave me bad advice by he would say like he would see me in the ring, and then he would be like, man, you can't work like that. You just gotta, and excuse my language, he would say, you just gotta take a nigga and throw him across the ring. And look at Arn Anderson, and you got to just take that. and you just got to take that nigga across the ring and throw him across the ring again and just look at Arn Anderson. I'm like, okay. But I didn't think it was good advice at all. But I love Shad. But that's the kind of advice that he gave me. So
I think it probably worked for him because he's a big guy. Like, 'cause when he did that, it probably looked like, oh, there's the big monster guy. When someone else does it, it might not come off the same way.
Exactly. You understand.
Yeah.
So him and Zeke Jackson, he would just, well, he actually I thought it was bad advice, but he said at the time I had an afro, and Zeke was like, yeah, man, just come in the ring and have a pick and just pick your hair, just be like that. And I thought it was the dumbest idea in the world. And I started doing it with Titus O Neil when we were like, he was doing the whistle and I was doing the hair, picking my hair out. So it's just a lot of fun. Those guys always crack me up then and now, especially Shad. But yeah, that's my Shad story.
Yeah, no, he's a ball of energy. Like, even in the last show, like JTG just called in and they started debating if the earth is flat. I had no idea what was going on, but I'm like, I'm with it. I don't know. But yeah, where can people find you? Where can people find the podcast? Just give them the quick plug and then let them know where they can find you.
Yeah, you can find me Twitter, Instagram at Real Fred Rosser, my government name. Search hashtag Block the Hate, and there are a plethora of superstars and friends supporting the movement. None of us are strong as all of us. Definitely subscribe and support my podcast, Pro and Bro Wrestling Podcast. Its Instagram is Pro and Bro Wrestling. And I appreciate the love. I always say, don't die with the story and you tell it. So thank you for letting me share my story on your platform. Thanks for letting me get that rub.
Yeah, no, thank you for coming on here and giving me that rub. Trust me, I could use it sometimes. I really appreciate you coming on here. You pointed out to me.
Wait, hold on. That sounded kind of not PG, man.
No, not like that, but you know what I mean. You know this for a fact. 'Cause even when I saw you in California, you like when we first started talking, you're like, I see you making moves. And in my head, I'm like, I do things, okay, listen. I put in the work. I'm very I think about what I'm gonna do and this and that. Don't get me wrong, I really do. Like, I have a thought process, and there is a method behind this madness, but it is madness. Sometimes I just jump into things. I'm like, yeah, I'll do that. And I don't know where I'm going with it, but I'm going to do it. And I trust myself and I bet on myself a lot. So that's why when I say things like, I don't know, sometimes I can use that rub is because sometimes I don't believe in my own hype, but I still run with it. Like, hey, supposedly I have this hype that I don't know about, and I'm going to run with it. But, you being able to do this with me reminds me that, like, I've built something here, I guess. Like, and it's cool that, you talked about a little bit earlier about how we have a different, like, you're like, how old are you? And I said I was 28. Like, I don't want to be one of those situations where you're like, oh, don't say that. But like, dude, I used to watch you when I was in high school. You know what I mean? And now I'm sitting there having a conversation with you. And I grew up a wrestling fan my entire life. Like, I broken bones jumping off my roof trying to do a Macho Man elbow. I've had my injuries off trampolines and this and I did that. And I realized very early on that, hey, Justin, maybe you're not athletic enough to be a wrestler, but we'll figure out ways to do something with wrestling. And when I went to school for marketing, in the back of my head, I'd always be like, maybe I can work marketing for the WWE or something. Or maybe it was always in the back of my head. And then this all happened literally because my ex-girlfriend didn't want me to have Instagram. So I made a wrestling page. And then I just started rolling with it. And now I'm getting to do cool stuff.
Oh, yeah, there's a method behind the madness.
Like,
oh, yeah.
There is, but I'm just saying, like, I don't know, man. Like, now I'm going to get to do some cool stuff with people in the wrestling business. And to me, I'm like, I don't know where it comes from or how it happened. Like, I know I put in the work, so I don't ever want to take that out of it. I don't want to say it's all purely just luck, but at the same time, it's like, it's hard to know what's going on sometimes, but and that's why I mean, when I say I appreciate you doing this with me, like, I genuinely appreciate you doing this with me because it's cool, man. I get to kind of live out a childhood dream to talk to wrestlers and hear their stories and pick their brains and hopefully inspire other people that want to do the same thing. I chose that I'd probably never be a wrestler, but there's people that follow me. Like, I dropped a couple of names the first time, like MJF, who literally commented on my page one time saying, scrolling through your feed on a Roddy Piper post saying, I just, I went home from college. I told my dad I want to be a wrestler. And now look what he's doing, And I'm like, oh, and I know there's still people that follow me that are currently training that will message me afterwards. But, I listened to that interview you did with Fred, and I heard him say this, and that, and that was real cool. And I'm like, hey, so I'm going to keep doing these things because I think wrestling fans were the ones that are really, really passionate about it, like they love stuff like this.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yes. It's feeding time, baby. It's feeding time.
Yeah.
I gotta eat, baby. I gotta eat.
So you go do your thing. I appreciate it. It was a pleasure. Hopefully I can have you back on here again. And yeah, man.
Yeah, thank you.
We'll see everybody later. I hope you guys enjoyed this casual conversation with Red Rosser and the Wrestling Classic. Dig it.
Peace out. Peace out. Peace out. Block.
It's time to say goodnight. We sincerely appreciate your patronage and hope we've succeeded in bringing you an enjoyable evening of entertainment. Please drive home carefully and come back again soon. Good night.